How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Patriot DIY channel. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to make your own DIY concrete countertop. Alright guys, this is going to be the last video in our cabinet build series. If you haven't seen the rest of the series where we built the lower cabinets, upper cabinets, doors, and drawers, make sure you check that out. I will have a link to that in the description below and right here at the top of the screen. But I could not think of any better way to finish out our stained cabinets in this rustic room than with a DIY concrete countertop. This countertop is 8.5 feet long, 25.5 inches deep, and 2 inches thick, and it was made with regular concrete that you can get from your home center like Home Depot or Lowe's. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build the concrete mold that we use for creating this countertop. I'm also going to be sharing some tips and tricks for how to get the best finish, and then showing you how to seal everything when you're done. But first, guys, if you haven't done it yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. Now, I think that's enough talking. Let's go build your DIY concrete countertop. First thing we need to do is build our form for the concrete. I'm going to be using melamine for this because it's very smooth and waterproof. I'll cut down the rough size with the track saw and then take it over to the table saw to cut down to final size. You'll notice I did put a little painter's tape on the edges just to make sure that melamine coating doesn't chip on the edges. Once I've got the bottom of the form cut, I can cut the sides, and you're going to want the sides to be 3/4 of an inch wider than the thickness of your concrete, so I'm doing 2 3/4 inches. Now I actually need the length of my countertop to be 8 foot 6 inches. So to add that extra 6 inches, I'll cut an extra piece to the right size and attach it with glue and pocket hole screws. Before I attach my sides to the frame, I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill these holes. And then I can go ahead and attach the sides. Now I made my sides a little longer so they'll be easier to remove once the concrete is set. Now I can go ahead and attach the sides and the end pieces of our mold. To make sure our mold is going to release well from the concrete, I'm going to go ahead and add a thin layer of paste wax all the way around. That's just going to help it release easily once that concrete is set. Next, we need to seal all the cracks, so I'm just going to run a thin bead of black silicone to seal those up. And then you can use a squeegeeing tool or your finger to clean it up. With my form finished, I'm ready to start mixing my concrete. And I'm not using anything really special for this. This is just 5,000 pound concrete that you can get at any Home Depot or Lowe's. And I'm just going to mix these one bag at a time following the manufacturer's instructions. And I may add just a touch more water than the instructions ask for to make sure it flows nicely into our mold. I start first with a shovel and then switch over to this concrete mixing tool. And I'm going to be adding just a little bit of charcoal coloring to this concrete to darken it up a little bit. With that all mixed, we're ready to go and dump it into our form. I'm only filling this to about halfway, and you want to spread it around good, especially making sure you get it down into those corners. And I'm just going to continue that process until I get the whole form about halfway filled. You can see I'm also covering it with plastic to make sure it stays nice and wet while I'm working with it. Once you've got it filled halfway, you want to go ahead and add some reinforcement in the middle. And for that, I'm just using this wire mesh that you can find in the concrete section of your hardware store. And then I'm ready to fill my form up the rest of the way. This 8.5 by 2 foot form took about 7.5 50-pound bags to fill it up. Once I had it filled to the top, I just used a piece of scrap wood in a back and forth motion to screed the top, getting off any excess and smoothing it out. Now we're effectively building our countertop upside down, so I'm not worried about getting this top surface perfect, but you do want to go over it with a float or a trowel to get it as smooth as you can. Once you've got everything nice and flat, this is going to be the most important step for making sure you get a nice smooth countertop surface with as few holes as possible. So I'm going to start out with a hammer going all the way around the outside and on the bottom, tapping on it to raise all the air bubbles to the surface. I do this several times all the way around and on the bottom, and as you do this you can see those bubbles raising to the top, and this is going to be the most effective way to make sure you get rid of those holes that may show up in your finished countertop. Once you've done this several times with a hammer, you can also use any power tools that'll help vibrate your form. You can see me using a jigsaw here. A sawzall or reciprocating saw would also be great for this. You just want to vibrate this thing as much as possible while it's still wet to achieve the best finish. Only thing left to do now is to cover it with plastic to keep it drying slowly and wait about 48 to 72 hours while that concrete sets. And 3 days later, I'm ready to come back and grind that exposed surface as flat as possible to make sure it's even with the top of our form. I have several tools I'm going to be using for this, including a masonry grinding wheel and sanding disc. So I did have a few surfaces that were slightly above my form, so I'm just going back with that grinder to knock that down and get it all perfectly even with the form. And now we are ready to remove the form. And since we use melamine and paste wax, you're going to see just how easy this form comes off. I didn't have to do any prying at all. And before we flip this thing over, I'm just going to wet sand these edges to knock off any burrs. And after flipping this thing over, you can see just how flat and smooth this is without any other finishing at all. We have a really nice finish straight out of the form. But despite all the vibrating that I did, I still have several holes in this top surface that we're going to need to fill. So you want to mix up a mortar or slurry to fill those holes, and you can use regular mortar mix for this, but I'm going to try out this Top and Bond product from Sacrete. I'm just going to go ahead and get this mixed up, and what I'm looking for is kind of a pancake batter consistency. So to do this, I want to go ahead and wet the entire surface before I put it on, and then I can begin applying it, just spreading it all over and really working it down into any holes that we may have. Then I'm going to go back and scrape it to get off any excess, but leave it down into those holes. Now once that's had time to dry, you can see how this has really filled all those holes nicely. But if you find that you still have some holes in the surface, you can always go back and do the same process again. But with all of our holes filled, we are ready to wet sand the surface. And I'm going to go over this several times, starting with 200 grit on my random orbital sander, all the way up to 800 grit by hand. Once you finish sanding, you can wipe it clean and wait at least a day for it to dry before applying your sealer. To seal mine, I'm going to be using this food safe countertop sealer from Ovation. You're going to mix this 1 part water to 2 parts sealer, and the instructions recommend spraying it on and then spreading it with a roller. I'm going to let it dry and reseal this 4 more times. And once it's done, you can see we have this beautiful, perfectly smooth satin finish on the whole thing. You can see I did end up with a little bit of a line here at that transition where I added 6 inches to my form. So that's not ideal, but for this extra long countertop, I think it's going to be just fine. Now this countertop is not perfect by any means, but I think it turned out great and it's going to look awesome on our cabinets. I love the variation in color that I ended up with, and those filled air holes actually add some character that I really like. With our countertop finished, we're ready to put this in place on our cabinets, but first I'm going to add a little bit of extra support on the ends of our cabinet boxes to make sure our countertop has a nice meaty surface to sit on. Now, after inviting 3 of my strongest friends over, we got the countertop in place, and I think it looks awesome. It fits perfectly. Now, as far as mounting it to the cabinets, I was scared to use any kind of hardware because I didn't want to crack it or anything like that. So just a little bit of construction adhesive around the edges before we put it in place, I think is going to work out just fine for this. Now, this countertop is not perfect by any means. It does have its imperfections here and there, but I think that just adds character to it, especially in this rustic setting. I think it turned out great. And honestly, I could not be happier with it. And with that, our cabinet series is complete. And you guys know that feeling of finishing a project. I'm very satisfied with how everything turned out. I hope you guys are too. If you have any questions, make sure you let us know in the comment section below. And if you're interested in seeing the rest of this series, the lower cabinets, upper cabinets, doors, and drawers, I'll have a link to that playlist in the description below if you want to check that out, along with links to all the tools that we used in this project. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.